What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another market update report here on our channel, Everything Jax Real Estate. I'm your host. My name's Justin, and I'm a realtor here in the Northeast Florida area, specifically Jacksonville, St. Johns County, Clay County, Nassau County. And I love doing these market update videos for you as the audience to get a better idea of what's going on here in the Jacksonville real estate market. So in today's video, we're actually going to be diving into the Beaches and Southside market update report for June of 2024. And with the way the market conditions are going right now, it's very interesting. So you definitely want to see all the different details that we're going to be going over in this video. So I'm going to come back in a second and we're going to go over all that great information. All right, so before we get into this video, I just want to mention, if you haven't yet, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you get notified to post more content like this in the future. So for this Beaches and Southside market update report, we're going to be diving into a lot of things. But the first thing we're actually going to be checking out is we're going to look at the amount of homes that went under contract in June compared to the amount of homes that were on the market in June. And so what we can see here is we had 116 sales pending in June, which left us with 494 listings for sale. This gave us a pen to list ratio of 19%. That is a pretty low drop if you've seen our previous videos. We went from being over 20 to being 20-25%, one of every 4 homes was going under contract, to now we're under that, and we're at really 1 every 5 homes are going under contract, which is a big drop for the area. Now this does kind of take into account these higher rates and prices not necessarily coming down the way some buyers would want. And with that, it leaves more homes in the market, which gives buyers more options, and more so than that, gives buyers more time. So 19%, that's a huge difference from where we were at last month. And it just does highlight the intricacies of today's current market. And it's why it's very important when you're pricing your home on the market, how you determine what price to go in at. So the current inventory is actually described as somewhat slow. This is different than what we've seen previously. And this is the first time we're actually seeing this compared to really when I started doing these videos, which was roughly about 2 years ago at this point. And so that's saying something. And that again is just showing that buyers are tired of having to get hit up with high rates. They're tired of having to get hit up with high prices. And so they're starting to leave the market some. But on the flip side, sellers are staying on the market longer, and you have more sellers coming on the market, because what we're having happen is we have a lot of sellers with a lot of equity. And because they have this much equity, they're willing to kind of wait to see if they can get an offer, get a contract close to what they want. And they're okay with coming down some because they still have plenty of room there with their equity. It's not to say that we still don't have homes going quickly, but we are seeing a lot of homes sit now compared to months past and years past. Now, when we take a closer look, we do notice that the homes in the $600,000 to $800,000 price range made it the relatively largest number of contracts pending. So that's also interesting too, because that's actually a higher bracket than we've seen in previous months. And what that tells us is it just, again, they play together. And on one end of the spectrum, we have less homes going under contract, while on the other side of the spectrum, we have that price going up still. So because prices are going up, but there's still less buyers in the market, some of them are still under contract, but ultimately we are seeing less contracts across the board. Now we also notice though that homes between $400,000 to $600,000 make up the largest amount of homes on the market. And again, for this area of town, that's going to be your typical price point to be in. But what's interesting is, again, even though that's your typical price point to be in, that's not where the most homes are going under contract at, which tells us homes between $400,000 and $600,000, there's something about them, whether if it's price, location, or condition, and probably location is the least of those concerns, that's keeping buyers away from them to the point where they don't make up the most contracts currently for their bracket for this area. Now, we did see the median list price for the area was actually $760,000, which does go to show that at least for June, we saw quite a bit more homes hit the market that were higher than the homes that make up the majority of homes on the market at 4,600. So something to key into there, because again, it is interesting. We're seeing higher prices, but we're seeing less contracts. At some point, one of those has to give. And typically we're going to probably go off the assumption that's going to be price that's going to give, because rates being where they're at right now probably is going to let the contracts give, in the sense that we'll have more buyers coming to the market. If anything, we'll have less. So that being said, we're going to continue to move it on down, and we're going to look at this graph of number of listings for sale versus pending contracts. And what you can see here is we actually have quite little homes under contract at $1 million and higher. And so what that means is, and we do have less homes for sale too, so it's not like we have all these crazy high priced homes, but what it does tell us is that there's a lot of homes sitting, especially at the higher price points, without anyone doing anything with them. So if you're watching this video and you're in those higher price points, so to speak, it means you have a lot more leeway right now to negotiate and to do get more from the seller for their house. Now we also see here that homes between 200 and 800,000 still have a pretty good separation too, which again just tells us we have a lot of homes for sale and not a lot of contracts currently in those price points. As we continue to move on down, we see there's a total of 885 contracts that closed in the last 6 months for this area. Now, with it being the summertime, you would think that number would be higher. In all honesty, I would think that number would be higher. Put in perspective, we were over 1,000, in multiple months last year in the summertime for contracts that closed the last 6 months. So to be under 1,000 and be in the summertime, it kind of goes against everything that I would have thought would have occurred. And it just goes to show that no matter how much you think you know the market, things can still happen to kind of take you off of what you think is going to happen. And so ultimately, it is one of those things. That's why there's no crystal ball out there. But it is one of those things that as we continue to move forward through July and August, September, it's going to be important to see how this translates. Does this become a continuing theme? Or do we start to see things pick back up in the third quarter and even the fourth quarter with maybe a rate cut on the way? Now, we also saw too the median sold price was $565,000. So again, we're seeing the prices go up despite the contracts going down. So what it means is if you're looking to sell, you better make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can to be one of those that actually does sell, because if not, you may be on the market for a while and you may actually have to come off at your price more than you may think you are right this second. Now, alternatively, there was a total of 130 listings that failed to sell in that 6-month period. Again, nothing really too crazy there. And that just, again, kind of shows that sellers are staying in the market longer, sometimes because they have to sell. And less sellers are taking their homes off the market for different reasons. And so that's why, again, with less homes coming off the market and less homes under contract, we're seeing such a higher supply of homes for sale currently. As we continue forward, we're going to look at days on market for the area. And the first thing we're going to see is for the active homes on market, we're seeing roughly a 48 days on market for that median time. And ultimately that stays kind of in line with what we saw in previous months. And honestly, with what we're seeing currently, I would not be surprised if I'm sitting here next month and we're looking at that number being higher, because with more homes on the market and less contracts coming, that's that lagging indicator, and ultimately with those things occurring, the lagging indicator days on market, it's probably going to come up because of the fact that with more options, buyers can be more patient, especially if you have sellers who are not willing to negotiate well enough to get that buyer off the fence and under contract. Now, we look at the homes that sold in the last 6 months, we see that the days on market for those were 17 days on market. So what that tells us, there's a big discrepancy between the homes selling and the homes not selling. Because the homes selling are selling relatively quickly in the first couple of weeks compared to the homes that are not selling, which are, again, at a month and a half on the market, and some that are obviously going to be way more than that. So that's where it really comes down to how are you determining the price of your home. Obviously, everyone wants to make top dollar, but what sometimes you have to understand is top dollar doesn't always mean highest starting price. Top dollar could mean starting at a price point where you actually do get an offer fairly quickly, so you're not paying additional holding costs with your mortgage and your utilities and your taxes and insurance. But also, by doing that, you also make it multiple offers, which we still do see occasionally in today's market. So top dollar is a loaded kind of indicator for a seller to determine, And you have to be careful because, again, if you go just highest price possible, you may be sitting here a month later, 2 months later, now lower than you could have been if you had just started a little bit lower at the beginning. So very important to have the right realtor in your corner to determine what exactly is the right situation for you and your house, because every area is different here in Northeast Florida and every neighborhood is different. So it's important to know how each neighborhood is currently doing on the market. Now, when we look at 1 month, so for the past month, what we see is we actually see that prices did come down some. Prices came down to $540. Now, they're still very high for the area, but $540 does show us that, again, having more inventory in the market is starting to take a toll on prices. And ultimately, it's also, even though it's taking a toll on prices, it's not necessarily taking a toll on days on market. So ultimately, what we're seeing is we are seeing that there are sellers out there who understand, I do not want to be one of those who's on the market for a month or two or multiple months. And so they're being a little more aggressive with their pricing. And because of that, they are taking a little bit less than what you may have seen 3, 4, 5 months ago, but they're selling it in the same amount of time. So therefore, they're not having to sit too long on the market. That's all really important information to know, because if you're watching this video and you're looking at buying a home in the area, it's good to know what's going on with sellers, like what's their mindset. And if you're a seller watching this video and you're determining, okay, I'm gonna be selling my house on X date, and I wanna make sure I'm as aggressive as I possibly can to get top dollar, it's important to know what that really means. And if you have a question on that, you can always reach out to me. I'm always happy to help, walk you through that path to figure out what the best process is for you and your family on. Now, as we continue forward, we look at the median listed sales ratio for the area. So what this measures how much of the list price is the seller getting. And what we can see here is that sellers are getting roughly 98.3% of their list price from buyers. Now, keep in mind, they're getting that because a lot of these sellers are pricing their homes more aggressively, or they've come down to a certain point where buyers understand they've already got their deal, so to speak, so they can't get too much more on top of that. But it does show that it's a very healthy market still, and that ultimately, even though prices are coming down, sellers aren't having to negotiate too much off of that price when they do get a valid contract from a buyer. Then lastly, the absorption rate for the last 6 months for the area, it's right now currently at 3.3 months of inventory. That is good for the area. If you're a seller, if you're a buyer, it means also that it's good. It could be better, but it just means that if no new homes hit the market, we'd be out of homes to sell and call it 110 days. So ultimately, it's one of those things. Like, if that number keeps going up, it becomes potentially more of a buyer's market, and sellers are going to have to be even more willing to negotiate on their prices. On the flip side, if it goes down, sellers don't have to do as much because there's less homes available and more buyers must be on the market. So very important to know, because ultimately all of this does play a role on when you're looking to buy or sell, as far as what exactly the market is doing at this time. Then lastly, we are going to look at this graph, and this graph really does kind of highlight a lot of what we're seeing right now, which is the higher inventory levels. And ultimately what we're seeing is that for most of these price points, as you can see here, we're starting to get these oranges, greens, turquoise, yellows, which just goes to show that at these higher price points, it's actually a buyer's market. And so buyers do have some leeway to dictate their price, dictate their terms, if you're a seller that has to sell. And so ultimately, it's just one of those things. It's just being cognizant of the fact that at those higher price points, it's a little more buyer's market. Now, what does that mean if you're under $1 million, which is going to make up the majority of homes in this area? Well, if you're under $1 million, most price points under $1 million are going to be still kind of almost that equilibrium market, which ultimately just means it's not a buyer's market, it's not a seller's market. So if the house is really good, it's probably going to lean more on the seller's side as far as who gets to kind of dictate how the transaction starts. If the house could use a little bit more updating, or the price may be a little bit higher, then buyers do have some leeway to dictate their terms to get the house under contract, because it's not bidding war anymore for most homes. So it's really important to know these things, because ultimately when you're looking to buy or sell in this area, you want to have all information at your disposal. You want to be able to make the best informed decision you possibly can, because again, it's not like you're going grocery shopping. This is a big purchase you're making, so it's important to have every little detail possible, make the best decision for you and your family. Same with selling. Ultimately, a lot of sellers in this area have a lot of equity in their houses, so you want to make sure you protect that equity as much as you can. But it's important to know the market is changing, so you have to be willing to change with it to be able to get your home sold or top dollar, obviously. So if you like this video, it's greatly appreciated. I'd love for you to actually like it here on YouTube as well, down below. And if you also can, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell, that'd be greatly appreciated too. But if you want to talk more about real estate here in the Beaches and Southside area or Jacksonville in general, in the description of this video is a link to my calendar. Feel free to schedule time for us to meet face-to-face or through Zoom to go over what your buying or selling needs are here in the area, as well as any questions you and your family have about the area, as I am a resident of Northeast Florida and I've lived in the Beaches and Southside area for pretty much my whole life, so I do know it very well. But also, if you just want to give me a call, in the description is also my phone number and my email address. Feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to take any calls I can, because at the end of the day, I would like to be able to get as much knowledge as I can to other people, so that way they can make the best decision they can for their family. So that being said, I will see you guys again on our next market update video, and happy house hunting.